If there was any weapon in the Monster Hunter series that seemed the most prominent, that would easily be the Greatsword. Appearing in all the games and proudly shown in the majority of covers, it is really a symbol of what the Monster Hunter series is. It's a game with over-the-top weapons and monster bosses to boot. The Greatsword is what I call a legacy weapon, having started in the very first Monster Hunter back on the old PS2. It's a clunky weapon that could decimate any monsters in the right hand. Overall, it's a really simple weapon, but that's just part of its charm. Single strong attacks that bring the sense of satisfaction of dealing heavy blows as opposed to quick, much more combo-based weapons like the dual blades or the longsword. I've already done a video for the Greatsword for this series about a year ago, but looking back on it now, I kinda want to remake the video from the ground up. There was just too much information missing, and it was just a rush video in all honesty for, the PC release of Monster Hunter World. So, since I'm starting fresh once more, welcome to the start of the 14-part series that will be Weapons through the Generations. I'm going to be covering how each weapon grew and changed over each generation, including motion values and any notable quirks that may have spurred with, Capcom spaghetti code. To those who never played the very first Monster Hunter game on the PlayStation 2, Capcom had a very interesting way to control the game. When the games continued on to the second generation on the PSP, weapon controls were on the main face buttons, nothing out of the ordinary here. However, the PSP lacked what the PS2 controller had, a second analog stick. Many would assume this would be used to move the camera, but back in Monster Hunter 1, the right analog stick is how to play your attacks. Think of it how you use gadgets in Ape Escape, but a lot more awkward. By pressing forward on the second analog stick, the Hunter would do a vertical slice. This is the Greatsword's strongest attack, but it's also the slowest. This swing has an excellent reach that could close the gap between you and the monster's weak points, while providing a safe and efficient way of cutting tails. It's also possible to unsheath this into an attack while running. By moving the analog stick to the left, the Hunter would do the horizontal slash. This is the weakest attack that the Greatsword can perform, but it's quick and effective for dealing with smaller monsters around the player. Like the vertical slash, this move would slightly move the player forward, so keep that in mind when using this attack in chain combos. By moving the analog stick to the right, the Hunter would do the upswing. This attack starts at the lower right of the player, going above and forward and ending to the back left of the Hunter. You're able to turn to the right while his attack is in motion. Plus the upswing doesn't move the player, so it's good for repositioning for the next vertical slice. Keep in mind that any of these swings can stagger teammates, and upswing can fling fellow Hunters into the air. By pressing in the right analog stick, the Hunter will kick, technically not a Greatsword holding attack, but by pressing in the right analog stick, with or without the Greatsword unsheathed, the Hunter will do a quick kick. This move is not to be relied on for damage, as it is a good quick method of saving fellow Hunters from sleep or dizziness. By pressing R1, the Greatsword will be used as a shield. With his large size, the Greatsword can make a decent shield when the Hunter makes a misstep or Raffles decide to want to vocally slander his opponent. You cannot move while blocking, but any attacks that collide with the Greatsword would take away stamina, and a bit of health depending on how heavy the attack was, and a fair bit of weapon sharpness. In emergencies, the Hunter can also unsheath into a block. This ensures you have enough stamina to block in the first place. Since the Greatsword's attacks are slow and sluggish, it is advised to roll after the end of each attack. Without the roll to reset the Hunter, you're just a sitting duck for any attack really, which in a life or cart situation is just asking to fail the mission. This advice is generally for all weapons, but the Greatsword's natural downtime after attacks is extremely dreadful, so roll when you can. Just keep a sharp eye on your stamina in case you need to block at the last minute. Some of the Greatsword's designs must look similar to a certain other weapon in later games in the series. Yes, some of the Greatswords in the first generation took the form of longswords, which got their own weapon class in Monster Hunter Freedom 2. They were more katana-like, but it does feel odd to see a longsword-like weapon blocking. There isn't much on the topic of must-have armor skills for the Greatsword in Monster Hunter 1. Actually, I really found nothing of real usefulness. But generally, for Blade Masters, the basic but safe skills to go for will be any skills regarding attack, affinity, sharpness, or sheathing. However, a key thing in the first gen of Monster Hunter, there are no decorations nor are there any charms, so all the skills you're going to get are directly limited to the armor pieces. Moving on to the most notable second generation in the Monster Hunter series, the Greatsword gained its most notable trait in the series, the charge attack. While also ditching the awkward analog controls for more traditional button-based combat, the second generation really shaped the Greatsword's playstyle, opting for a more predicted slash go method of attack for many monsters instead of the run and gun or slash until it's dead playstyles added a novel level of complexity to the Greatsword. The Greatsword has 3 levels of charge, but when it comes to the vertical swing now. You can unsheath it to a regular swing, but holding triangle would charge the current swing. The goal is to get that extremely powerful level 3 charge onto the monster's weak spot, but it can be tricky to time and position. Just keep in mind that hoping to charge too long is an overcharge, which will result in the would-be level 3 charge to roll back to a level 2 charge, which is the difference of a 30% loss in motion for extra time. Getting the armor skill focus is a nice quality of life for the Greatsword as it lowers the amount of time needed until the level 3 charge, which for faster monsters it can aid in landing those powerful blows. As an added bonus, it could result in more time for the Hunter to reposition and potentially have a second chance to attack. With or without the skill, the timing is key for charging the Greatsword. Pay attention to the Hunter's glow and sound cue for when to let go. Attack Up is generally a good skill for the Greatsword for its already powerful attacks. It's an easy to get skill into any set. Just be mindful for the defense debuff that the decorations can bring if the negative skill goes to -10. For those tired of bouncing, ASP can get rid of the problems for Blade Masters. Just remember that bouncing doubles the rate of sharpness lost in weapons. So even if the weapon doesn't bounce, if it makes a bouncing claim, that means you lost double the normal amount of sharpness in an attack. Sharpness +1 is a safe jack of all trades skill for any Blade Master. It's better on some weapons than others, mainly for the different levels of sharpness that handicraft can give. For some weapons, it could extend the current gauge a bit, or it could add a higher level of sharpness, which is the easiest way to add more damage potential to the weapon. This handy skill turns every unsheath attack into a guaranteed critical strike. Even with the Greatswords that typically have negative affinity, this skill is immensely powerful, and difficult to get early game. High-grade earplugs and skills like wind and tremor resistance are situational. They can come in handy when dealing with monsters that can stomp or fly. You get a little bit of super armor when charging with the Greatsword, but anything like a calm breeze can push you out of a charge. The third generation of Monster Hunter was a very interesting time for the series, adding in a couple new stronger combos for the Greatsword, not to mention that Trident 3 Ultimate had a very interesting way to fight with the introduction of underwater-based combat. It affected a decent handful of weapons. Monster Hunter Tri was going to be a PlayStation 3 game at first, but because of the costs of developing for the console being too high, Capcom changed plans and then worked on release for Nintendo Wii. And as we know, if it was going to be a Wii game for a third party, it needed to have some sort of motion control gimmick. Thankfully, the manual for the game lists the positions for most of the combos. As an added bonus, for those Monster Hunter 1 veterans, there was an option in Monster Hunter Tri to have the classic controller carry the legacy way of attacking with the second analog stick. While underwater, the Greatsword's more sluggish nature shows. When doing vertical slices, be a charge or not, the Hunter will flip forwards with the Greatsword. Horizontal swings have the Hunter spin out, and upward swings are just backwards vertical slashes. The slap is about the same as it was on land, and finally, the kick's animation is replaced with the Hunter tackling forward. It is here again that I mentioned the importance of rolling at the end of attack animations. With these wide and slow slices, the Hunter is left defenseless for a lot more than on land. The Greatsword receive an extra form of charging attacks in the third generation. The first is by doing a regular charge or forward slice with X. Pressing X afterwards would do a sword slap, which isn't very powerful, but it does quick damage along with a little bit of KO damage. After slap, holding X and holding back on the analog stick will have the Hunter ready up for a strong charge. Like the regular charge, there are 3 levels, and overcharging would do the same as a level 2 charge, so learn how to time those charges. The second way of getting towards a strong charge is to block, kick, press X again to slap, and then hold X and back an analog stick for a strong charge. The same skills for before are still relevant here. Sharpness +1, Attack Up, Crit Draw, Focus, High-grade earplugs, Tremor, Wind Res, and Mind's Eye, which was renamed from ESP. Since the third generation brought in Monster Stamina, there was this new skill that allowed hunters to do impact damage on the first unsheath attack. It's pretty niche, but making the monsters target more frequently and adding impact damage while hitting the head can be useful. Quick sheath isn't super mandatory, but it's a good quality of life for the Greatsword, and it's great synergy with Crit and Punish Draw, making it easier to just slam, sheath, and wait for the next opening. If getting Attack Up Large is a little bit too out of reach for your current set, then Challenger is a good option. Plus 15 Infinity and Attack Up Large when the monster's angry is pretty powerful, especially in G rank when monsters are always angry. The 4th generation of Monster Hunter brought in everyone's favorite mechanic, ledges, and the ability to mount monsters. However, the Greatsword really didn't get a whole ton of new moves other than a mounting strike, assuming the motion damage is the same as the unsheath, and a combo finisher. Doing a mounting strike is pretty simple. You just need to jump off a ledge and press X while in midair. Once the Hunter lands, pressing A will have the Hunter do a level 2 strong swipe. The Greatsword receives a combo finisher to the strong charge. The damage is dependent on the strong charge level, but it's a really strong finisher and can really add up damage to the monsters knocked over. You simply press A after a strong charge to do a strong swipe finisher. Cyber armor skills doesn't really change your utility here, though the real change is that crit draw is no longer guaranteed crit upon an unsheath. If your weapon has negative affinity, then your 100% affinity will be subtracted from the affinity of the weapon. Anything above 100% affinity is a crit anyway, so it doesn't really affect weapons that have inbuilt affinity. This skill can be handy for the endgame for Ultimate. With weapon augmentation, the player can choose to have the chance to get health restored on a hit, which for Greatsword, any strong attack will pretty much restore as much as a Mega Potion. Just remember that peak performance and Challenger +2 do not stack. Monster Generation/Generations Ultimate is still running off of 4 Ultimate's engine, but now has a lot of flashy hunter arts and styles that bring in many ways to play. The most basic hunting style is Guild style, which doesn't really give anything special other than having the ability to have 2 hunter arts. Striker style changes the Greatsword's moveset back to Freebie Knights, without changing any emotion values. There is no strong charge, and by extension, no strong slashes. However, you no longer lose out on damage when overcharging. Striker style allows 3 hunter arts to be equipped. Aerial style takes away the ability of charging attacks while the hunter is on the ground. The unsheath attack is now a jumping strike that will do a quick mounting strike while moving the hunter slightly forward. After the hunter jumps on top of a monster, they have the option to charge their Greatsword midair, and upon landing do a strong slide slash. These charges cannot overcharge. Since the midair charge is so quick, the motion values for these attacks are much lower than the conventional Greatsword attacks. Since it can be spammed in quick succession, the hunter can quickly wrap up damage on the monster's back. Aerial style allows for a single hunter to be equipped. Note that this strong slash's damage is not dependent on the aerial charge level, which its damage is more comparable to a strong charge finisher slash without the charge. Adept style isn't too different from Guild style, other than the strong charge is removed from normal combos. With a successful Adept dodge, the hunter can run in the joystick's direction when they hold X. This dash cannot overcharge, but the hunter can move a fair amount in distance while charging. It can also be slightly delayed in case you want to wait for monsters to move. The Adept charges themselves aren't too powerful, but the strong charge finishers have the same motion values and dependent on their charge level. Adept style allows for a single hunter to be equipped. VALOR style takes away any form of charging while not in VALOR mode. Pressing Y to get into the VALOR sheath and pressing X will have the hunter charge the Greatsword. Landing attack will fill up the VALOR gauge. A level 3 charge will pretty much fill it halfway. While in VALOR, an unsheath attack will have the hunter ready a strong charge. It has inbuilt focus, but having focus on the set will lower the charge time even further. This swing cannot be overcharged, and the strong swing afterwards will once again be dependent on the strong charge level. Ensure the second swing hits, as is much more powerful than even Guild's strong swing motion value. VALOR allows a single hunter to be equipped. Alchemy style like Striker takes away the strong charges swings like in normal combos. It also restricts the upswing out of combos, but a swing forward and pressing A twice will combo to the level 0 strong swing. Alchemy style gives a hunter the Alchemy Barrel, and also allows 3 hunter arts and the option to make the 3 arts into SP arts. The hunter scripts a Greatsword on the ground before rushing forward and unleashing a big shockwave. Get both the initial swing and shockwave that you target to do lots of damage. Just be mindful of fellow hunters in front of you when using this. With a bloodthirsty swing forward, the hunter powers up the next attack. The next unsheath attack won't be held back to prepare to lay destruction on your next turn. The hunter readies their blade, building up power of Great Fury. Then it is released with a ground-splitting slash in the direction you choose. If you get attacked while using this art, you absorb the hit, and your attack will be increased by 50% at all levels. With a quick hop, the hunter swings their sword forward with harder strength. This is a great hunter art to slam flying monsters out of the air with. It can be a bit hard to aim up and low risky to do with a monster charging you, but it's worth it if the monster staggers. Not much has changed for the core skills of the Greatsword. However, there are a couple new armor skills that could be useful in armor sets that will help you put even more damage. Sheath Sharpen isn't really the drop critical draw for it, but if you get this easily, then it's something nice to have. When sheathing your weapon, there's a 35% chance for the weapon to restore a bit of sharpness when the monster is enraged. So it's something that goes pretty well with the Greatsword's playstyle. Critical up is definitely a hard skill to get for a good reason. This anti-skill boosts critical damage from 1.25 to 1.4. And with skills like Critical Draw along with VALOR's style is faster strong slashes upon the unsheath. Just asking your monsters to get absolutely destroyed in hunts. To my knowledge, the only way to kick in Worlds is to have a Greatsword and do a block plus triangle combo. Any other weapons need to interact with something in the environment like Paratoads in order to kick. There seems to be a pattern with Greatswords during each leap in generation. The core combos are still there, however, there's a charge level even greater than the strong charge in World. While this tackle is very similar to the one found in 3U's water combat, it has a dual purpose. The first is meant for brute forcing through attacks kind of like a lance's forward shield advance. The other was skipping charge levels. Pressing circle after attack will also do a forward cleave with the Greatsword. Both the tackle and cleave's damage is dependent on the current charge level. So the charges will overcharge, the tackle and cleave will be overcharged as well, so keep mindful of that. Like how 4U introduced ledges, World introduced the concept of sliding into attack. The Greatsword holding triangle while sliding would charge the Greatsword. Letting go would have the hunter jump up, hitting anything upwards and pressing triangle again, would have the Greatsword stab downwards, hitting up to 3 times on the way down. You can't overcharge this attack, and the falling down thrust damage is depending on the charge level of the slide. In a similar fashion to Genu's air style, holding triangle while in the air will have the hunter charge up for an attack. This attack cannot be overcharged and has good synergy with the glider mantle. Here's the pattern I was talking about before, another generation, another evolution, and a charge attack. A true strong charge is immensely powerful, but since the attacks have so much motion, it does take a fair bit until the hunter is even able to start charging the attack. Press an O triangle long enough so that the sword is about to be charged. Press circle to tackle. Press the hold triangle plus hold back on the analog stick. Let it get into the animation before the charge and tackle once more. Then hold triangle and back on the stick once more. This is a strong true charge. It can be overcharged, but thankfully World's an easier visual for when the Greatsword attack is at its max. There are 2 attacks this move, but ensure the second one hits as much more powerful. Second slash is one of the strongest wake up moves in the game, so those learning Greatsword have to learn how to distance well. Again, not much has changed in the skill department, however, there are new armor skills that can be added onto sets to add a bit more variety in armor sets. Plus, there were changes to how skills work in Monster Hunter World, so those will be noted. At a first glance, this skill doesn't seem very useful. But for slower weapons like Greatsword, this skill is pretty much perfect when you lack the RNG and decorations that don't allow the full 7 affinity, since the Greatsword doesn't take up stamina charges. By the time you make it towards a true strong charge, you're pretty much guaranteed for a 30% extra affinity towards the next attack. With the introduction of the Clutch Claw, hunters are now able to latch onto monsters as long as their stamina allows it. Attacking with the Greatsword has the hunter slice their way down to the ground, making the affected area soft and tender for a couple minutes. This would have the part of the monster's body be softer so the Blade Master weapon still bounces off it, and it would be a temporary weak spot. With the swinger loaded, the Greatsword gets the ability to shoot out a burst after an attack with R2. It's quick damage that could hopefully stagger a monster long enough for an easy opening. Charging the Greatsword, after a burst we go straight into the true strong chart that does even more damage than a normal one. Going through the shortcut requires 3 full charges, as opposed to 2 with the shorter bash combo. In conclusion, the Greatsword has come a very long way since the very first Monster Hunter. Even with these changes, the main idea is still stuck. It's a very simple but complex weapon and relies heavily on the hunter's knowledge of the monster's behavior and positioning in order to land powerful blows on the monster's weak areas. It may be a slow weapon, it may have one of the weakest blocks in the game series, but there's something satisfying about landing a charge with a Greatsword, like a hunter waiting for its prey to get in view so it can take a shot at it. Maybe if the April Fool's game would actually come out, we would have actually gotten the ultra strong true charge for the Greatsword. Guess we'll see. Until the next episode.